So what makes me cranky about James Gunn's Superman? They're still trying to make Mr. Terrific a thing. Mr. Terrific was arguably the most cringe-inducing part of Arrow and the entire Arrowverse, and I don't know why we need to try to do that again. Yeah, Marvel proved you can take the goofiest stuff from the comics and translate it into the big screen in surprisingly delightful ways, but I just don't see this one ever happening. I have a T on my face, and my balls do all kinds of techno-magic stuff. It's just not something I think I'll ever be able to take seriously. If this is a representation thing, let's just grab Jon Stewart as our Lantern like the Justice League cartoon did, because that worked pretty well. Really though, we should just drop him altogether because this movie has way too many characters, and he, our Green Lantern Guy Gardner, and Hawkgirl just don't belong here. It's as if Gunn wanted to have the whole Justice League to play off of, but the studio said, Batman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash were too expensive, so they gave him some cheap knockoffs from the discount superhero warehouse to play with instead. It feels like when you ask for the hot new action figure and your parents come home with one of their side characters because the one you wanted is actually sold out. I mean, the movie opens with a title card saying that metahumans have been around for centuries, and yet we basically only see Superman and these three Justice League wannabes. Which might work if the movie were about Superman's relationships with them and maybe his ideas about teamwork in general, but it isn't. It's not really about anything in particular when you get right down to it, but we'll come back to that. In any case, neither they nor most of the supporting cast outside of Lois and Luthor have enough time to establish themselves in anything but the most superficial way. The worst one of the bunch is Hawkgirl because she has basically nothing to say or do other than screech as she hits things with the mace. Mr. Terrific gets the most screen time, but his shtick is pretty much the one-note super genius is bad with people bit. It's kind of funny, I guess, but it's been done to death, and usually better. Guy at least has some bit of character arc from selfish dick to helpful despite being a selfish dick, but as much as I hate to say it, I think Nathan Fillion absolutely sucked at playing this character. He's just too affable to really sell it. There's no heat to his performance, no bite to the barbs, no real insufferability to the arrogance. He's just too nice. It's not even comical like, he's just a dumbass who's trying to overcompensate. No, it just feels insincere. In fact, most of the actors here seem like they're missing some key component of what their character needs in order to function as they are written, including our new Superman, David Cornswet. He looks the part, he's got the right overall tone, but he definitely can't seem to differentiate between his Clark Kent and his Superman, and he's just kinda whiny. I mean, it's still a step up from being a morose murder machine, and I really appreciated all the scenes of him actually saving people and generally caring about people's welfare, but he never projects the kind of gravitas that makes Superman super. Since James Gunn also chose to dial way back on his level of relative invincibility compared to other iterations of this character, you kind of wonder what makes him such a big deal in this universe with all these metahumans that are supposedly running around. The only insight we get into that is from back in the aforementioned title card that essentially declares him the best superhero ever, but that never comes across in the movie. It's one of the major drawbacks of Gunn choosing not to make this an origin story and instead set it a few years into him being Superman. A choice that I'm perfectly fine with in principle, by the way. It's just that the execution leaves something to be desired. For the people in the movie universe, it's the first time Superman has faced a foe that can lay him out, but for us, it's the first time we're seeing him at all. That could fit in with a movie that has a more dramatic or, I hate to say it, darker approach, wherein the idea is to kind of shock you with the notion that somebody can incapacitate Superman through straight force a la Doomsday. But this is definitely not that kind of movie. And if they do make it to Doomsday later, it's not going to hit as hard because we've already seen Superman get pretty messed up on his first outing. So we end up with this weaker projection of Superman that never does anything to set himself apart from the rest of the Justice Gang, which meant it was on Cornswet to really sell it, and he doesn't. Just compare that scene of Christopher Reeve doing the Clark to Superman transition with the clip of Cornswet confronting Luthor about crypto, and you can really see the difference. Speaking of Luthor, this is another prime example of something's missing. The character as written is much more like the Luthor we would expect to go up against Superman than, say, whatever the hell it was that Jesse Eisenberg was trying to do in Batman v Superman, but Nicholas Hoult just lacks the menace, like he doesn't want to fully commit to the bit. He seems like he should feel genuinely dangerous to be around, but really, it's more like angry Twitter reply guy who blocks you immediately upon any response. If that's what you're going for, fine. But you can't pretend like he's a genius mastermind that has everyone dancing to his tune and perfectly willing to personally kill people without a second thought. You gotta pick a lane and stick to it. That's really the name of the game here. James Gunn's Superman just can't commit to anything it wants to do. For all his recent comments about this being a story about an immigrant or whatever, that's just not something his movie bothers to get into. There's a quick moment where Lex is on the verge of going there, but it's immediately resolved before that happens. And look, I am 100% over every creator in Hollywood thinking their movie has to be a platform for some cause or particular political peccadillo, so I'm not interested in having any more of that. And I also love a good turn your brain off and watch some explosions movie as much as the next guy, but whatever your choice is, you gotta commit to the bit. If your movie is just a roller coaster, then take me on a ride. If your movie is Superman as an allegory for immigration, stick to that through line. Either way, decide what story you're telling and leave the others for future movies. But just like it has a dozen different characters who don't get nearly enough screen time to justify their existence, it's got a dozen different ideas of what story it wants to tell and refuses to stick to any of them. Superman interfered in a regional conflict, stopping it all by himself. What does that say about him? What are the consequences of that? How does it affect what he does in the future? Wait, sorry. We got a better question? What if the Kryptonians may not have sent him here for noble purposes? What does that mean for Superman's entire identity? How is Earth going to react to that? Wait, never mind that for a minute. The side characters are cracking the case with goofy hijinks. And on we go. Just never fully leaning into anything we want to do or say until a climax that is ultimately kind of anticlimactic, especially since we've had a few good-sized action scenes by that point, all of which repeat quite a few of the same beats we get in the finale. Further, to go back to that something's missing thing, that final conflict is not treated with the seriousness it really deserves. It's an Earth will be destroyed and everyone will die kind of thing, and there's not a huge sense of terror, panic, or even really urgency. It's almost like everyone knows it'll work out, so hey, just have some fun with Krypto running around doing dog stuff. Krypto was a strange choice as well. There's no explanation given for Krypto whatsoever. He just exists and does dog stuff, but occasionally with super force. Actually, given Krypto's portrayal here, he should be the most dangerous and lethal thing in this whole movie, but again, we're not going for that tone, so he's mostly harmless. Ma and Pa Kent also fall into that strange choices pile as they lean heavily into the y'all come back now kind of affect. Yet Clark doesn't sound like that at all, so it's really jarring when they show up. But at least this Pa Kent isn't telling his son it might be okay to let children die, and instead gives him a reasonably good pep talk, so I guess that's a plus. Which really just goes to show why this movie is really frustrating to talk about, because there are glimmers of good and great all throughout. Lois, for example, is great. In fact, Rachel Brosnahan was the only person I felt like hit their mark perfectly. She's not quite like the Lois Lanes we've seen in the past, but in good ways that work. The scene of her immediately going hard in on Clark when he agrees to be interviewed by her despite their relationship is great. And other than, again, Clark coming off as whiny and defensive, it's a good character moment for both of them. But for every scene like that, there's some bizarre choice that makes you say, but why? It's a movie in dire need of a script doctor to do some editing, to move some stuff around, and decide on what precisely the through line here is supposed to be. Hell, even the score reflects that. They're reusing the John Williams theme, but in a slower, more muted and restrained way, instead of having those horns just blasting it out with all the glee of a kid who just discovered how loud his trumpet can be. For my part, I think if you're going to go with a Superman who's been at it for a while, questions about who he is and what he stands for don't really apply anymore. A universe that has already embraced him as the #1 Duke of Metropolis has kind of settled that question. So don't get bogged down in that. By all means, keep the scenes of this Superman looking out for even the littlest of little guys and showing how that attitude has profoundly touched people's lives, but we don't need to ask, well, why is Clark really here anymore? Those scenes stand incredibly strong on their own. Don't muddy them with all of this other nonsense. And since you introduced the Discount Justice League, focus on that. Make this about Superman learning he needs to work with other people, especially those who may not be as idealistic as he is, and build your foundation for the real Justice League later in doing so. Having an opponent who can physically defeat him is a great foil for that, since getting his ass kicked for the first time should be an incredibly humbling and frankly terrifying moment for him. Especially if it's followed up with him completely bombing the first interview he has with someone who isn't too busy being starstruck to be swayed by his disarming "aw shucks" persona, and actually asks hard-hitting and pointed questions. Then we'd all have to wonder if maybe even Superman needs help sometimes. It would certainly result in a very different speech from Ma or Pa Kent than we're used to hearing, one more about the thin line between self-sacrifice and the hubris of thinking all the world's problems are yours to solve. A lesson that DC might want to take to heart, since it seems like they keep giving one creator total control over their entire universe, much to its detriment. I, of course, gave up on solving every problem in the world a while back, so now I'm just here to help with the problem of whether or not you should go see James Gunn's Superman. But believe it or not, I'm still not sure what to recommend because it's such a weird mix of good and bad. I suppose, at the end of the day, it's a reasonably fun flick, it's a big screen kind of movie, and theaters could really use all the help they can get if they're going to stick around. So I'll give it a hearty, go see it if you feel like it. It is of note that there are 2 post-credit scenes, but you absolutely do not need to waste your time waiting to watch them. They are totally pointless and add absolutely nothing to either this film or to any future DC crossovers. They're not funny. They're not engaging. I'm talking about the ant playing drums after Ant-Man level bad here. Anyway, that's what I thought about Superman. You can let me know what you thought in the comments below. I know I've been lax about posting for a while, but that's because I do not have my own Justice League to help out with everything. So please feel free to still do all of that like and subscribe stuff because it does not go unnoticed. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time I have something to complain about.